The docs folder is basically what I call the golden folder, because that's the place where basically your human readable context lives. That's where you put all the information. You put, not just put, but you also structure and organize all the information that you want your agent to understand about your project, okay, about the world of this project. Now, there are a few very important things we need to keep in mind when we create this docs folder. So we try again to go quickly over that so that you basically have an overview of how a simplified docs folder has to look like. So we keep the docs folder. It's a minimal docs folder setup, and this is basically the source of truth for your agent. Basically, the agent finds there all the information, all the context you want the agent to know of the project. All right, so the rule of thumb is if you explain it twice in the chat, write it once here. So there is no such thing as prompting and prompting and prompting until you got something. So if you don't want to use that kind of method to basically prompt your way to a solution, but you want to, for example, you know that you're given a prompt to Claude, but then you realize, oh, I had to repeat myself at this point. That's when you know that you have to add a file, or you have to add instructions into your docs folder, and that's it. That's the way we want to think about this. So, for example, we have here an architecture, for example, MD, okay, that shows exactly to Claude, that tells exactly Claude how your system is built, all right? Or we have here decisions.md, which is basically guardrails so that it can actually really come up with good solutions based on your situation, not, whatever situation Claude is, thinks is great. Then we have conventions, for example. So you want to make sure that every file is named properly. You don't want to have issues with, for example, file names, yeah, such as, there's a capital letter, or one file starts with a capital letter, the other file doesn't, and etc. Things like that are really unnecessary. They're really causing a lot of trouble to our project, so we must make sure that Claude understands naming conventions, formatting, and repo rules, etc. Then we have workflows. That is basically for Claude hugely important. Claude needs to understand how your system is actually built. How are the individual nodes of your system connected, and how you are thinking about it. If you have an idea about it and a very specific vision, it needs to go inside a docs folder and have it explained to Claude there. Then if you have information that is old, you need to keep that docs folder always cleaned up. So it takes a bit of work, but at the longer run, it is saving you a lot of time, a lot of headaches, yeah? Well, it receives the very specific guardrails, and the better the guardrails are set, the cleaner they are set, the better and the more efficient, the quicker you are working with the project. Now, this is a solution, the docs folder is a solution for, let's say, projects that are just started. If you want to move quickly and fast and you don't want to bloat your project with, having too much architecture, too many other tools involved, that's when we use simply a docs folder, simplified docs folder to build that system. And then later on, we can expand to, for example, solutions that include RAG, etc. Now, we have here, again, the examples such as the architecture, the system overview, the architecture that basically explains the system overview, the key components, the data flow, how data moves through the system, even one line helps. So if there is something that is repeating itself, if it's a process within your system, you include it inside that folder, and you point then later from the Claude.md file towards the docs folder, where you basically say, okay, here is where you find that information, for example, about architecture, or about decisions, how you make decisions. Or about the conventions, the workflows, and for example, we have here more points that we can add there. So the more stricter, the more guardrails you give to Claude, the better, in my perspective. Good. So then we have to connect the docs folder to Claude.md. So you basically tell Claude to please connect your docs folder with Claude.md, and Claude will do that for you. And you can basically hear, or Claude will read that documentation map as an example, and will basically do that for you. Yeah. For example, we have here, that's an example documentation map for architecture system overview. Read that file. Yeah. For naming and formatting rules, read that file in docs. Yeah. Good, and that's it for today. That was information about the docs folder, the simplified docs folder, and in the next video we will discuss the advanced docs folder.